Maneva na sema PENDREAM TV. PENDREAM TV there osia dem yopo
problem. But then he's also critical of that move by the Ghanaian government, that voluntary repatriation. So it's voluntary. You can decide if you're a Ghanaian citizen, you want to return to Ghana. They have a package on offer. If you like it, take it. And then you join the plane all the way from South Africa to Ghana. That is perhaps the appropriate reaction. Listen to him.
The AU, the Ghana response. What do we do with these people who have their children here? When you chase away a person from Lesotho, what must we do with that? After chasing those people, who's going to support these children? Because we are related, not by rhetoric. Literally, we are related. Many people spend many weekends in Lesotho going to weddings, Botswana, Mozambique, Zimbabwe. The same thing with Zimbabweans coming this side and all of that. We have children together. We've got businesses together. We've gone to school now together. And then how are we going to hate these people and claim that we love their children? A man from Ghana was beaten in front of cameras. Till to date, we're not told who got arrested for that. But Duduzile Zuma is in court for writing on Twitter, "We see you." That's her charge. That's what she's being charged for. To see that because the Zuma uprising that happened in July was not state-sponsored, there is an action against the people who participated there, including the so-called Ngizwe, who got arrested for incitement for that July 26. Today, we've got people who are announcing before, not the people who are speaking after. They say, on the 30th of this, there's going to be hate. All of you must leave, and nothing happens. It's because we agree with it. There is something in law we can use to stop the spreading of that hate.
That you are paying Julius Malema so much, millions, so that he can protect you.
He will never protect you. Julius Malema will never protect any foreigner.
What do we do with this?
He's just a Mickey Mouse opening his mouth too much. He doesn't know. He has no idea what we are. I'm not talking for everyone. I'm talking about where I'm coming from. It's just a whistle away. We have the war. We got the war. We are warriors. We are men. We are soldiers. We are police of this country, and we are ready to defend it.
You can do everything, but you can't pay with that.
Because Ghanaians are gone now, 300 of them. How many 300 of jobs were created after the Ghanaians have left? So it's just a myth, it's a lie, which they are using to further divide us, to perpetuate colonial divisions that were created in the past. And you say, no, I hate colonialism. I was a student in Feast Must Fall. We must decolonize education. We must decolonize this, we must decolonize that. But the borders must remain. The borders are actually the most practical thing that was brought about by colonialism. And you can't say you are against colonialism, but you support the borders. It's never consistent like that. The Ghana response was not necessary because it now creates an impression that we are all like that, when it is a certain section of our society that needs to be contained by law enforcement. And one Ghanaian lady was saying, you see, the problem is, and I wouldn't have taken this option, the problem is we're being beaten in front of the police and the police are not doing anything. That's the problem. And when this opportunity came for me to leave, I left, because if the police can't defend me, it means the state is in agreement with the people who are beating me. So we think it was too quick. We'll still resolve this, and President of Ghana should have given us, some time to really deal with this matter, and we'll get to the bottom of it. We hope they will come back to their senses. We don't have to respond the same way they did. We need to pursue the diplomatic engagements with Ghana until we find one another. We don't think Ghana responded in a manner that really reinforces dialogue and diplomatic engagement.
It deserves in terms of the law enforcement agencies.
Thank you very much. I think that we should all accept that the violence is a state-sponsored violence, because the people who are committing all these crimes are accompanied by the police, and the state broadcaster and the mainstream media is giving them unlimited airtime to spread hate and to incite violence. We've seen in many videos where people manhandle other people in the presence of the police, take them from one building to the other in the name of looking for drugs in the presence of the police. And in terms of the law of South Africa, once you handle me like that, if you are not a law enforcement officer, that is manhandling. It can even amount to common assault or even assault itself. And police are duty-bound to intervene and make sure that no civilian act like he is a law enforcement officer if that person is not. We have seen the repeat, at least in the context of South Africa, a repeat of a similar thing, where black-on-black violence was sponsored by the state. It happened in the same areas where these xenophobic attacks are happening. They use the same tribal group to perpetuate hate on each other. The only difference here is that we've not yet seen the trucks carrying weapons to go and give those people to continue killing each other. When a state was confronted with the reality of a democratization of South Africa, when they didn't know how to handle this black resistance, they said blacks must go and attack other black people. And we must not even be tempted to sugarcoat it. It is exactly the repeat. What did the SABC do at that time? It broadcasted those activities the same way it's doing it now, and never censored them, with a hope that it will spread across all over South Africa. We are told that we're supposed to have the best policing in KZN, which is able to nip this thing on the bud, but it's not doing it. If anything, they are running. I was saying to the SG of the EFF, you can go to all the videos of the EFF. When we try to enter any building by force, in less than 2 minutes, they would have used a stun grenade. You have never seen police using stun grenades against these people who are perpetuating hatred amongst Africans. If anything, police are running with them to go and commit other crimes on the other side, instead of saying to them, yes, you have a right to gather, but you are now unruly. And because you are unruly, you are going to have to disperse. No, they don't say that. They encourage them to continue to the next building, to the next this and all of that. So we cannot, you want to use our economic situation to justify a hatred. There's always been a contestation of resources. It has always been like that, but we're able to coexist even when resources have been so limited. Let's take, Sophie, for instance, the language called Fanagalo. It didn't happen now. It happened way before the EFF was formed, with a discovery of diamond and later discovery of gold.
Zimbabweans take your job, Nigerians take your jobs, and you march and close shops and beat up people. Tell us, after doing that, how many jobs have you created? By beating up these Nigerians, by beating up these Ghanaians, by beating up these Zimbabweans, loading them. If you load them, I have not seen anyone being loaded. No one. And you say they take jobs from you. You have beat them up, you have taken them out of the country. How many jobs have you created after that? Because the battle should be about jobs. You beat people because they took your jobs. They have no skill, none whatsoever. Say somebody took their job. The only skill they know is to drink intellis, impesu, and all of that nonsense, and want to pretend like they are revolutionary as it were. I don't want your vote if you behave like that. Take them away. If the MK wants it, give it to them. I don't want the votes that says to me, I must hate Africans for you to vote for me. I'll never do that. But I must go take an African child out of school, proud, elderly person, pushing a child, an African child that looks like you. I must go to a school and push a child that looks like Opano, my child, and say, get out of school. The same way apartheid did, and push Lindiwe Zulu out of school, Lindiwe Zulu out of school, and saying, you are not worthy of education. I must repeat that. I must do that. I will never do that. You can take your votes. Let me die with my conscience very clear. I will never refuse a pregnant woman of African descent to give birth in the clinics of South Africa. Never will I do that.
With the government is that there is a lot of illegal immigrants in the country. So if you are talking about this Home Affairs, if you want me to tell you about this Home Affairs, do you know why most foreigners are staying on this road? Because this Home Affairs is the one that has been cooking fraudulent documents. So, but if this Home Affairs is saying these people are legal, so why are they running away from their houses? Why are they not putting protection order for that person who's harassing them so that the police can arrest them? It's a lie. It's a lie. It's a fabricated lie. If I'm staying in this house and my neighbor is harassing me in this house, I have to go to the police station and tell the police, please put a restriction order on this person so that they don't come next to me. If that person on the next day violates the restriction order, that person is arrested. So that is not true. That is not, it's a fabricated story. And that's why it must stop, because we don't need this in our streets. There are kids, there are South African kids here who are scared now to walk here. When the girls, when they're walking here, they are shouted upon. So we can't allow that. We can't allow that. So whoever is threatened is here legally and they are threatened in their house. This is not a police station. They must go to the police station and open a case there, and that person guarantee they are going to be arrested, because you put a restriction order on someone, and if they violate that, they get arrested. That is simple. So let us not lie. Let us face the problem as it is. Most of these people are not legal. Secondly, most of these people got their documents fraudulently. Let me tell you that how we are so sure that these people are not legal. When you are to be verified, first of all, you need to show the date of entering the country with a passport. You need to show why did you come to the country. intelligence must come in on that one to check you whether in your country you are not a killer or something. Thirdly, immigration must come into the party. So it's Home Affairs, it's immigration, it's intelligence, and your embassy. So you can't jump all these stages and come and sit at Home Affairs. Because we know these Home Affairs used to take the machines, the equipment of Home Affairs, take them into their houses to fabricate IDs. Tina, when we start working on something, we got evidence. We got like 5 years evidence. So you can't bluff us. We know names of police and government officials who are involved in this nonsense. We know about the buildings that are hijacked in town that belong to works. We know what is happening there. But we are begging the president, we are begging the leaders, we are begging everyone to say, guys, let us do things in a correct order. This is a country. We need to claim back this country. We need to keep this country as a prospective country that is the future of our kids. That's all we're saying. Nobody's going to die. Nobody's going to dig the road. Nobody's going to hit the foreigners. Nobody's going to loot the shops. We are saying the government must deal with this problem, because does Home Affairs know where these people come from? Does Home Affairs know where they stay? Because by right, Home Affairs must know each and every one of them where they stay. Most of them, when they are here, they don't stay on this road. But they are here now. Before we start anything, let's ask Home Affairs, do you know this person? Where does this person stay? Home Affairs is supposed to know each and every one where they stay. But Home Affairs doesn't know that. So we are standing up because we are men. We will not, this will never amount to violence. It will amount to the correctness of the way the things are supposed to be done.
The dignity of African people demands more from us, and as we speak about African unity and pan-Africanism, we must confront one of the greatest dangers facing the continent today, Afrophobia. What some call xenophobia against fellow Africans is in truth Afrophobia, which is the hatred, suspicion, exclusion, and criminalization of African people by fellow Africans themselves. We must also be honest that Afrophobia is not new, and it did not begin in South Africa in 2008 or 2015. It is part of a long colonial strategy designed to divide African people, weaken solidarity, and make unity impossible. Colonialism survived by convincing Africans that they were strangers to one another. The Berlin Conference divided us artificially into Anglophone, Francophones, Lusophones, Arab Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, North Africa, East Africa, Western Africa, and Southern Africa, not for our benefit, but to fragment African identity and prevent continental unity. From slavery to colonialism, to neocolonialism, to modern financial domination, the pattern has remained the same. Africa is valued for its mineral, labor, land, strategic position, and markets, but African lives themselves are treated as disposable. The world speaks about democracy and human rights, yet throughout history it has repeatedly supported dictatorship, coups, destabilization campaigns, assassinations, and wars whenever African leaders attempted to exercise genuine sovereignty over African wealth. When Patrice Lumumba demanded control over Congolese resources, he was removed and assassinated. When Thomas Sankara sought to free Burkina Faso from dependency and debt, he was isolated and overthrown. When Muammar Gaddafi promoted African financial independence and continental integration, Libya was destroyed under the banner of humanitarian intervention, leaving instability across the Sahel that continues to this day. The destruction of Libya did not only destroy Libya, it destabilized Mali, Niger, Chad, Sudan, and the border region through weapons, militant activities, trafficking networks, and migration crisis. This is how imperialism functions. One African country is weaponized against another, instability in one region becomes a crisis for neighboring states, and divisions weaken the continental collectively. White supremacy understood very early that a united Africa will become an unstoppable political and economic force,
and so division became a weapon. We have seen painfully examples of this throughout modern African history. In 1969, the government of Ghana, under those order, expelled hundreds of thousands of undocumented migrants, many of them Nigerians and Western Africans who had contributed to the Ghanaian economy. Years later, during economic crisis in the 1980s, Nigeria retaliated by expelling millions of Western African migrants, including large number of Ghanaians. This cycle of retaliation between the two great African nations demonstrated how quickly economic hardship can be manipulated into hostility against fellow Africans. Instead of confronting neo-colonial economic structure and elite failures, ordinary Africans became targets. In Zimbabwe, the Gukurahundi massacre of the 1980s remained one of the most painful chapters in the post-independence African history. Thousands of Ndebele civilians were killed during brutal state crackdown in Matabeleland. This tragedy reminds us that ethnic chauvinism and political intolerance can become deadly when power is not guided by democratic accountability and Pan-African humanism. Across Northern Africa, many blacks continue to face racism, exploitation, arbitrary detention, slave trafficking, and violence while migrating through Libya, Tunisia, Algeria, and other transit regions. The collapse of Libya after NATO intervention intensified the suffering of black African migrants, many of whom were falsely accused of being mercenaries, imprisoned, tortured, sold into slave markets, or abandoned in inhumane conditions. In recent years, inflammatory rhetoric against sub-Saharan Africans, parts of North Africa, has contributed to attacks, discrimination, and expulsion of vulnerable migrants whose only crime was searching for dignity and survival. And of course, we have witnessed a repeated waves of anti-African violence in South Africa itself, where migrants from Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Somalia, Ethiopia, Nigeria, Malawi, Congo, and elsewhere have been attacked, displaced, looted, and killed. We must say clearly, this violence can never be justified. An unemployed South African and an unemployed Zimbabwean are both victims of the same global system of inequality and exploitation. A Nigerian street trader and a South African worker are not enemies. A Somali shopkeeper and a township resident are not enemies. The true enemy is the system that keeps African people poor while a tiny elite accumulates wealth. Kwame Nkrumah warned us when he said, "The forces that unite us are intrinsic and greater than the superimposed influences that keeps us apart." Julius Nyerere also reminds us, without unity, there is no future for Africa. Thomas Sankara taught us that imperialism often occurs in more subtle forms: loan, food, aid, blackmail. Part of that subtle imperialism is teaching Africans to fear one another instead of confronting the structure that exploits all of us collectively. We must also never forget that African liberation itself depended on solidarity across borders. South African freedom fighters found refuge in Zambia, Tanzania, Angola, Mozambique, Algeria, Ethiopia, Libya, Zimbabwe, and Nigeria. Mozambique and Angola suffered destabilization and military attacks because they supported the anti-apartheid struggle. Nigeria funded liberation movements across southern Africa. Tanzania became a home for exiled revolutionaries from across the continent, and Algeria trained liberation fighters from anti-colonial movements throughout Africa. No African country liberated itself entirely alone, and that is why Afrophobia is not only morally wrong, it is historically ignorant. It is a betrayal of liberation struggles, a betrayal of pan-Africanism, and a betrayal of the spirit of 1963 Addis Ababa. Comrades, we must understand something fundamental. In the global system, Africans only truly have one another. Europe will defend European interests. America will defend American interests. China will defend Chinese interests. Africa must defend African interests. Fellow Africans, the dream of Africa, of a united Africa, is not impossible. It is possible to establish a common African currency in the future. It is possible to build integrated rail and transport system from Cape to Cairo. It is possible to establish African-controlled financial institutions that free us from dependency on the IMF and World Bank. It is possible to create visa-free movement across the continent. It is possible to create universities that lead the world into science and medicine. It is possible to create a borderless Africa like Africa was before the Berlin Conference. What is required is political courage, and the EFF remains committed to the total liberation of Africa, not only from neo-colonial rule, but from economic exploitation, inequality, corruption, tribalism, and dependency. As we commemorate Africa Day, let us remember that history will judge our generation not by the speeches we made, but by whether we transformed material conditions of African people. The task before us is clear: unite Africa, industrialize Africa, democratize Africa, defend Africa, liberate Africa economically. There is no room for anyone who wants to hate Africans. There is no room for black-on-black violence. Africa must stand up and say, we are one, and will never listen to the voice of ignorant people who don't know where we come from. We are who we are because of those who came before us. We are one blood, we are one skin, and we remain the same victims all over the world. Africans are hated in South Africa, Africans are hated in Africa, Africans are hated in the whole global village, and therefore it is now the time for Africans to show one another love, and this mission should be achieved in our lifetime. I thank you. For many of them, understandably so, but the reaction of government should have been, postponed a bit to give us an opportunity to deal with what is happening here in South Africa.
Give us more time. That's essentially what Julius Malema said the Ghanaian government should have done. Give the authorities some more time to deal with the situation. Professor Lord Mauko Yefuga is a professor of international relations and diplomacy at GIMPA. Thank you very much for your time. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning. How are you?
I am doing. I hope you are too.
I'm good. Yeah.
Does Julius Malema have a point?
No, I don't think he has a point. He was contradictory in his statement. On one hand, he says Ghanaians reacted so quickly. On the other hand, he says that the police were standing by for the mob to literally do whatever they wanted to do. So in those circumstances, what did he expect Ghanaians to do? Stand by and watch the mob to lynch the people to death? No. He has been very consistent in terms of his pan-Africanism. But on this occasion, I think he's part of the leadership failure. When this riot started, I expected he and other activists to rise up and condemn it in no uncertain terms. They didn't do that. Even if they did, it was not as vocal. So Ghana had to do what Ghana had to do. Ghana had to look for its citizens. That's the responsible thing to do under the circumstances. So I think what he's saying is afterthought. They didn't know that Ghana will react so proactively, because this is not a common trait in Africa where African leaders come to the rescue of their citizens. So I think that is why he's saying what he's saying. But unfortunately, it is too late. It's too late for those statements.
I think he's also suggesting that at least because it will take time for them to be able to nip this in the bud. Are you suggesting that they've had enough time to solve the problem
My
if they really
brother,
wanted to solve
this
it?
thing didn't start yesterday. Xenophobic attacks in South Africa has a long history. Just after the end of apartheid, South Africans have vented their anger on fellow Africans, and it became an annual ritual. So if you are going to nip it in the bud, you should have done it. And when these march activists signaled that they were going to start their agitations, the police, the security services should have risen. Because if you have intelligence as a country, then you should be able to be on top of all this before they even become real. You didn't do anything about it, and the innocent people are being chased. People who are even there legally are being chased. So I think they've had enough time as a country to sort this thing out. They have not done that, and I think politics has also entered the fray. So that is why it is so difficult for the ANC and even the African leadership to do something about this issue.
What would have amounted to enough action for the Ghanaian government to have decided, okay, we need to give them adequate time? What did the South African authorities need to do to have convinced that they are interested in solving the problem?
Well, Ghana initially tried to resolve the thing diplomatically. So there was a meeting of African diplomats. That didn't stop the rioters. So every now and then we have more riots in Johannesburg targeting fellow Africans. So you don't, as a government or as a country, it would have been very irresponsible for Ghana to trust the judgment of the African government, given that they have not demonstrated leadership. So I think Ghana initially was expecting what a responsible government would do by South Africa stopping. Because you have the security agencies at your disposal. The state has a monopoly over the use of violence. So if the state is overcome or the state is overtaken by the mob, then the state has lost that legitimacy. So Ghana couldn't have done anything else than to do what they've done, which is the right thing to do.
We have evacuated the first batch. We understand there are more people who have registered to return to the country. Now, with what Julius Malema has said, should we take it that we've sent enough caution to the South African authority for them to sit up, or we should just go ahead and do the rest of the evacuations?
Well, Ghana has to look at the situation, what has happened since the first evacuations, whether it gives enough signal for South Africa to take action. If that has not happened, then they have to proceed. Particularly if it's a voluntary repatriation, people want to voluntarily come home, then the government cannot stop them. And you don't want to be blamed later that you were irresponsible towards your citizens. So yes, South Africa may have taken a cue from what has happened in the first evacuations. But if Ghanaians have registered to be evacuated, they have that right. And we have a duty of care as a country to them to evacuate them back home.
In fact, having said that, then there is, I think there's the angle of, is it Jacinta Zuma, who has become one of the faces of the recent anti-immigrant protests and actions, who is of the opinion that our Ghanaian authorities are overreacting, that they fail to understand what they are seeking to achieve, that all they are seeking to achieve is to protect local laws and also ensure everybody in the country is legally has the necessary legal documents to cover them. What is the best reaction to that?
Who assigned them that responsibility? Is that their duty? If South Africa is a serious country, those boys should have been rounded up and locked up because that is not their job. If you think they are illegal migrants in your country breaking the laws, there's a lot of law enforcement agencies. So you, the citizens, you are vigilante. You don't have that right. You are rather breaking the law. So what she says is neither here nor there. She should even have that right to be talking. By now, in a serious country, she should have been arrested with her gang. Because they were rather breaking the law. The Ghanaian government didn't overreact. Because if there's a breakdown of law and order, the South African government seems so helpless and they couldn't do anything. You don't expect Ghana government to also sit down either. So what we have done is a rebuke. It's an indirect indictment of the failure of leadership in South Africa to allow the mob to take over law enforcement. Who does that?
Now, paying attention to what is happening in South Africa, what are your own views? Because this is a government voted for by the people in South Africa, has every authority perhaps to deal with this problem. But we are not seeing a lot of action in dealing with this. What's your reading of what is going on within South Africa?
Well, South Africa has a systemic problem, government failure, the inability of the post-apartheid government, successive government, to rise to the occasion to deliver for the people. So there's frustration. And that is why I said the political anger is also there. Migrants have become a political football. So every election year, that is invoked to win political power. And I think the ANC, as a ruling government, has lost a lot of support in South Africa. If you look at the voter support for ANC, it has declined consistently. So because that's a failure of leadership, the South African people have not enjoyed all the benefits that we're expecting from the end of apartheid. I know this reminds me of what Frank Fanon talks about black faces or black men in white faces, something like that. When you talk about the psychological aspect of colonialism, and that even after colonialism is overthrown, the psychological aspect already, the black South Africans know that the challenge they face is leadership failure. And they also know that there's economic inequality, economic power is in the hands of the white people. But because of the colonial construction of power in South Africa, the black South Africans are not able to take the fight to the white people. So now they are venting their frustration on fellow black Africans, which is very unfortunate. So the dynamics are just very complex. But at the base of it is leadership failure.
Leadership failure?
Yes.
Having this in mind, because even looking at the numbers that are registered to be voluntarily repatriated, there'll be still a majority of Ghanaian immigrants still in South Africa. What else can our government do to ensure that every Ghanaian in South Africa is safe?
Well, the Ghanaian High Commission in South Africa has to be up and doing and make sure that they have an inventory of Ghanaians resident in South Africa, even after the evacuations. Because if you have over 25,000 Ghanaian residents and you're evacuating only 800, that's just a tip of the iceberg. You need to continue monitoring and ensuring that wherever Ghanaians are, they are being protected. If some of them eventually still want to come back home, then you have to facilitate that. But you see, it's not going to be possible to completely evacuate every Ghanaian from South Africa or from any country back home. International migration is part of interdependency we have in the international system. One would have thought that South Africa, given that they have business and economic interests and they have their own citizens scattered all over this continent, they should take steps to ensure that every migrant feels safe. If somebody breaks the law illegally, then you take action against that person. But to not do that and allow the mob to literally take over your job as a government, that's very unfortunate. So I think Ghana has to still continue diplomatic overtures to the South African government to make sure that South Africa performs its duties that it owes to everybody that resides in South Africa, both legal and illegal.
And let me conclude with this question, because this week I posed the question of African working together as one economic unit to a former finance minister of Ghana, Honorable Seth Tekpe, and he's of the opinion that when it comes to leadership on the economic front, it should be deferred to South Africa. Haven't gone through all this, because now it looks like the entire Africa has an issue with the way South Africa is handling this problem, because virtually every country has one or two persons in there who would have been affected by this. Does this pose a threat or a danger to the integration we are looking for, especially on the economic front?
Yeah, it does. And that is why I keep talking about leadership failure. You know, African unity, African integration has not really trickled down to the masses. So we have this elitist approach to integration where leaders meet in Durban, they meet in Ethiopia, Addis Ababa, they meet in Accra, just to talk about big agendas. But the ordinary Africans have not bought into the African integration and the interdependency that we have as a continent. And if you are going to give that leadership to South Africa, the question you should be asking is that how has South Africa performed as a leader since the end of apartheid? Because if the average South African is not even aware that their liberation, their freedom from apartheid was actually assisted largely by fellow African countries making financial and other contributions towards their liberation, then how are they going to see these Africans as their fellow Africans? So until and unless the ordinary South Africans are conscientized to understand the interdependency and that they owe their freedom to fellow Africans who have to make a lot of sacrifices for their liberation, then that is going to change. So you cannot give that economic leadership to South Africa when the South Africans, as a citizens, don't see themselves as Africans enough. The average South African feel that they are outside of Africa. So that mindset, that mentality has to change before you can begin to talk about regional or continental integration. Otherwise, it will still be an elitist, heads of state kind of agenda that is not going to go anywhere.
Thank you. Thank you, Prof, for speaking to us.
No problem. Thank you.
That's Professor Lord Maukuyevuga, who is a professor of international relations and diplomacy. He says he sees nothing wrong with the way the Kenyan government has acted, that at this stage, this was the best move for Ghana, knowing that these citizens are under threat and there was a need to do something immediately. Now, all of us who've been following what has been transpiring in South Africa find Julius Malema's stance quite problematic and troubling. Because so far, from everything we've seen, everything we have listened to, from all the videos we've watched, and the way in which even these so-called activists speak, you get a sense that they're having a field day. Nobody is there to stop them from doing whatever it is they want to do. If they want to beat you up, they'll beat you up well. If you're not lucky, the police will take over and continue from where they ended, because now they will describe you as an illegal immigrant. So there's a problem in South Africa that we are seeing no leadership in addressing it. Not from the president and not from the local authorities. In fact, the only proactiveness we've seen is from, I think, a governor or a mayor in KwaZulu-Natal or something, who's decided to even be the leader of the anti-immigrant sentiments. So anti-African sentiments, where they are, he's actually decided to use the authority given to him to take businesses belonging to other African nationals and say, leave, I'll give it to my fellow South Africans to continue. They were not part of the foundation of those businesses. They don't know what it took to do to put together those businesses, among others. So those are some of the things we are seeing in South Africa. So for Julius Malema to say, give them time, give who time? Is it Julius Malema that we are going to give time? Or is the other one, the president, who we are going to, why have I forgotten his name? Cyril Ramaphosa, that we are going to give time to? That's the question that the Ghanaian authorities have to answer. It's a question that the Nigerian government has to answer. It's a question that even their immediate neighbors, Zimbabwe, Zambia, all of those people have to answer. And Ghana's response is, you know what, at this point, we can't guarantee the safety of many of you. What we can do is say, if you want to return to your country where you'll be safer, we have an aeroplane on standby. We can guarantee your movement in this country. We can help you start over again. So that's the reaction of Ghana. Ghana is not saying we are packing every Ghanaian. We are saying it's voluntary. If you feel you can still survive within the scheme of things, no problem. But if you think that is gotten too far for you, register and come with us. We'll take you back to where you came from. So you return back to Ghana. That's all Ghana is doing. Nancy?
You see, the way he was speaking, for thinking and speaking the way he did alone, if the girl and his people and her people, if they get him, they will beat him. Because it looks like his thinking is different from most of them.
Yeah.
Okay. But at this point, Malema does not have any power. In fact, he himself, if they get him, they will arrest him.
Oh, they were going to jail himself before.
Do you get? So he does not have any power. And those who actually have the power
are not doing
what he says they can do.
Yeah, and that they should give them time to do. Yeah.
Okay, the people who have the power now are not doing that. And they don't look like they will do that anytime soon. And so I'm asking, when or at what point
would they do it?
Were we going to see some action from the authorities in South Africa? Or at what point was he hoping that Ghana would act in defense of its citizens in South Africa? So for me, Like, I don't agree with what he said, really. He does not have, if he had power, if he had power,
would have
we'll
said,
take
"Oh,
his
you do
words
something."
for it. We would say that, okay, let's give him time and see. Maybe he will do something. He doesn't have the power. The ones who have power too, they are not thinking the way he is thinking.
Yeah.
And so at this point, what Ghana must do to protect its citizens is what it must do. And that is what it has done. That's all. Simple as that. I don't know who power. They are now going to sit down, go to parliament.
Debates.
No, because most of their, what do you call? Like the one who was saying that they are taking businesses of foreign nationals, for instance.
Yes.
They are the ones who have the power. And that is their thinking. And in fact, his video, for instance, when you go under it and you see the comments from the South Africans, it means that is their mindset.
Yeah.
They all believe that this is the way to go. And so I don't see where he is coming from. That, I mean, we should agree.
So for you, it sounds like a lone voice.
Yes.
In the wilderness.
A lone voice with no power. Lone voice with no power to do. He can only talk. The one who would act supports what is happening. The president of South Africa. He agrees with his the youth of South Africa. Or he doesn't? He
doesn't. He has said he doesn't.
He doesn't.
Yes.
What shows he doesn't?
He says so.
Anybody can say anything, but your actions. By your actions, we'll know whether you support or not. It was one of his promises to his people that when he becomes president, he will make sure that immigrants will leave their country. And they are just enforcing it. So he cannot tell us that he doesn't support the activists, so-called activists, what they are doing. He does. Because if he doesn't, we would have seen some action from him, telling the police, the immigration officers and whatnot, what to do.
But we've seen statements from even the South African police.
That what?
That they are not going to tolerate it.
Tolerate?
This kind of actions that has led to us bringing our citizens.
Senna, the people who will experience it, the people who lived it, are telling you that, see, anybody can get up and issue a press statement. That one there, we have issued. The media will say that, oh, the office of the president has issued a statement saying A, B, C, D. Okay. But the officers from the presidency are in town doing otherwise. And which of them has been caught and reprimanded? None. We haven't seen a statement saying that for harassing foreign nationals in South Africa, this group of youth have been arrested. We haven't. Have you heard?
I'm sure there would have been some arrests.
Oh, Senna. The people who lived, those who came back, out of the 300 who arrived, they told you that in the face of the police, they've been attacked. In the face of immigration officers, they've been attacked. So what are we talking about? That's anybody can issue a press statement, knowing very well that what he's issuing is not the issue. So, I mean, at this point, I don't see who in his or her proper mind would say that what Ghana is doing, I mean, we are not acting right. I don't see where it's coming from. Who would be saying that?
I see. Well, so that's anyway. We're just speaking to Professor Lord Malko Yafuga about Julius Malema's stance on the move that's been made by Ghana led by our Foreign Affairs Ministry. In fact, he himself, they nearly put him inside. Anyway,
This was not necessary because it now creates an impression that we are all like that, when it is a certain section of our society that needs to be contained by law enforcement. And one Ghanaian lady was saying, you see, the problem is, and I wouldn't have taken this option. The problem is we're being beaten in front of the police and the police are not doing anything. That's the problem. And when this opportunity came for me to leave, I left because if the police can't defend me, it means the state is in agreement with the people who are beating me. So we think it was too quick. We'll still resolve this. And President of Ghana should have given us, some time to really deal with this matter, and we'll get to the bottom of it. We hope they will come back to their senses. We don't have to respond the same way they did. We need to pursue the diplomatic engagements with Ghana until we find one another. We don't think Ghana responded in a manner that really reinforces dialogue and diplomatic engagements. It actually creates a very bad, extreme situation, which is not. It's a selected few, and we are pursuing and persuading government to still act on those few. And we're saying to them, they must give us some time, they must be patient, and those who don't feel safe, especially the legally documented Ghanaians, should be able to run to police stations for safety, and then they will be directed to rightful places where they will be secured. But, it's an emotional issue.